Hello and welcome back to the Jump Show. We had a huge weekend of racing just passed with the Dublin Racing Festival, and I'm joined by the usual suspects in Dan and Jake to review all the big races. I've time-stamped all of it, so if there's a certain race you don't want to listen to, then please feel free to skip along. There's going to be lots of information in here, so I won't take it to heart. If you wanted any of our opinions on any race that we didn't cover, then please just drop it down below in the comments section, and we'll liaise as a free to come back with a response to you. So, gentlemen, I have no time to ask you how your weekends were. We're just going to dive straight into day one and race one as well. And that's the Nathaniel, Lacy and Solicitors partners novice hurdle. It's always a strong trial for the Albert Bartlett, and Willie Mullins has won it for the second consecutive year with Minella Crooner. He wasn't one of the more fancied runners, but he did it nicely, controlling the fractions from the front. Jake, what did you think of the performance?
You've fallen for the age-old conundrum there. It's Minella Crooner who won the race, not Crooner.
Did I actually? Oh, shit.
Even I didn't notice that, but that's a fantastic start. No, we're keeping that in. Let's keep the camera rolling, baby. I need the world to see Willow's incompetency. Like, we can't have it all cut out.
I'm not cutting that. Yeah, that's staying in there. Minella Crooner. God, what did you think?
So yeah, straight after the race, I was actually quite a big fan of what Minella Crooner did. I thought that he obviously dominated from the front. He set his own tempo. Danny Mullins just gave him a peach of a ride. And then the more I've watched it back since, I think I've kind of swayed the other way, and I think it's more of he got the benefit of the lead and the rest just couldn't get to him. I think, yeah, as I said, when I first saw it, I thought it was just a really good performance, but now I'm starting to think perhaps maybe, especially with the Bartlett in mind over 3 miles, he was coming back to them after the last. So yeah, I think that the form could definitely be reversed at some point in time. Minella Crooner was one of the only horses who came from off the pace to close. He was racing in 5th for most of the race, but at the second last, he made a bit of a mistake and dropped back to like almost last. So he managed to get right back through the field, close all the way to the line. I think 3 miles is obviously going to be a massive benefit to him. So yeah, I think there was only 3 1/4 lengths, 2 3/4 lengths between them at the line. That form could definitely be reversed at Cheltenham going up in trip, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it was a very informative race, but perhaps not the winner, the one to take out of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of horses in there who weren't suited to the slow pace. They seemed to dawdle around. Dan, I head to you. Were you impressed with the run, or was this just a freebie on the front end?
I'd definitely be siding with the latter there. And I think the 2 main conclusions I drew from the race is, firstly, that Danny Mullins is just an absolutely top-class jockey and one of the best around. How many times we see it, and it's not even just this season, but before, he produces so many hurlers of rides. He's absolutely fantastic. And the second observation is that Minella Crooner will go very, very close in the Albert Bartlett. The race just seems tailor-made for him. He'll need to brush up his jumping. It's been now 2 very different rounds of jumping. The one in the middle, whereas against lesser opposition, was good. Maybe as I say, there's only 2 hurdles in the last 7 furlongs. That'll play to his strengths at Cheltenham, but he will need to brush it up slightly. But yeah, I don't see a world where he's far away in the Albert Bartlett. But to be honest, I don't think these staying novice hurdlers are a great bunch this year.
We'll move on to the spring juvenile hurdle. This is a race that produced last year's Triumph winner Quilixios, and once again, I think this is the key race. Vauban did it really impressively. He's now shot to the head of the Triumph hurdle market. Jump Show fans in absolute clover. Was it 16-1? 16-1 or something like that, wasn't it, Dan? Absolutely huge shout. He's obviously still got to go and do it, but what were your thoughts on the race?
Well, even if he doesn't, we're going to be dining out on value for weeks, lads. Don't you worry about that. It'll be another story of me demolishing the value and then ending up penniless after the race is finished. But it was this is a fantastic performance. And to be honest, once Phil Daw was declared, which I didn't think he was going to be, I was almost happy to take a narrow second based on the experienced golf there was. But this was a very good performance by Vauban. So much to like. There's still improvement there as well. I think he ran a bit free, jumped slightly to his right and a bit slow at times, as he did on his hurdling debut as well. And it was interesting that the 3 interviews after the race from Willie Mullins, Paul Townend and Rich Ritchie, all very independent, all mentioned that he's going to improve a ton next time as well. Now, if he improves a ton next time out, he's going to be very, very tough to beat. I think that run is far more substance than Pied Pipers at Cheltenham. I think this race is the key trial. I know Pied Piper was very visually impressive, but realistically the race just fell apart, whereas this was the best juvenile race that's been run all season. And on that note, Ante-post in third was making his debut for Willie Mullins and his hurdling debut. Now, this was an absolute stormer of a run right here. Like, I couldn't quite believe how well he run. This is the best debut by Juvenile all season, for my money. And to be honest, I've already had a saver on him for the Triumph at 20-1 to get within 3 lengths of Phil Dorr, only 6 lengths behind Vauban, having been out in the rear all the way, jumped very novice early on, but picked up very strongly. I think there's plenty of improvement left in this lad. And the way that Willie tends to run his, he won't be going for any kind of handicap or some weak novice with him. He'll be aiming him at the top level. If he wins one, then great. If not, he retains his novice status for next season. So at 20-1, I think Ante-post is a very good each way bet for the Triumph.
Is that 20-1 now, or did you take 20-1 before, or what?
I backed him yesterday. I think 20-1 is still available quite widely as well.
Fantastic. Jake, show a little bit of love for Phil Dorr, hopefully, or something in behind that might maybe run well in something like the Boodles.
Yeah, so obviously Vauban was really good. It has to be said. I think no matter what happens in the Triumph, he's going to be hard to beat for either Pied Piper or Phil Dorr. You would say, I guess, he jumped out to his right at a few, but it was nothing, too concerning. And yeah, Phil Dorr, he made, he was very prominent, cunning for home. He was off the bridle, and Vauban was, about to cruise past. So it's going to be difficult to overturn that at Cheltenham. I think, softer ground would help him. I think the hill, the stiff finish will help him. I wouldn't be throwing away my Ante-post ticket on Phil Dorr, but obviously he is up against it. Something that, I was just going to talk about the horses in behind. If you're looking at them for a Boodles like me, as Dan mentioned, Tattersalls, or however you say it, I think
easy for you to say.
Exactly, yeah, going to be more of a Triumph horse, as Dan mentioned. The Tide Turns ran really well in fourth. He only needs one more run for a Boodles, so potentially look out for him being entered up in some kind of weak juvenile hurdle or novice hurdle for Gordon. And then Icar Allen, if I don't know, Willie could obviously easily send him to the Triumph, but if he did run again as well, he obviously needs one more run to get to get a handicap mark for the Boodles. If he ran again, he would also interest me for the Boodles. But yeah, it's going to be tough for anyone to beat Vauban at Cheltenham.
If trainer comments are anything to go off at all, then Gordon didn't really want to send Phil Dorr here. I think it's probably a bit of value around 7 or 8-1, maybe a bit of an overreaction in the market.
That is the thing. I do think it was a very last-minute decision. And if you're going to be sticking by Phil Dorr very stubbornly, one thing you'd be kind of saying at the top of your lungs would be that maybe he wasn't fully cooked for this, because it did seem a hasty decision to send him here. And he's still a player in this. He's going to be there or thereabouts. I think he was 8-1 with Bet365 after the race. That was a few points too big, in my opinion.
Still 7-1.
For as much as I'm a Vauban fanboy.
And I think everyone who watches this show should be as well. We'll move on to the Irish Arkle. I was really hoping that this race was going to give us like a clear indication of who's actually going to go on to win the Arkle. But what it's actually done is bring more horses into question. Dan, I'll head to you. Do you think we saw the Arkle winner in here? And if so, who?
It's a mystery, isn't it, really, this race? I can't believe we've got to a point this late in the season where a horse that was relatively well beaten in last year's county is now the Arkle favourite and may even be the most likely winner of it in Edwardstone. It's turned on its head, obviously, with the absence of Fernie Hollow. It was a very strange race. Obviously, St. Sam set off at an unsustainable gallop. Unlike last time, he made a couple of errors, which definitely didn't help. But I think there was still a lot to like about that run. Like, once they came round the bend, he was about 5 lengths down. At the end, he's about 5 lengths down. So he didn't actually lose that much ground. So for him to stick on despite the errors and going so quick early on, I thought that was a lot to like about that. But Riviere de Tel is probably, if not my favourite, one of my favourite horses in training at the minute, because she's just absolutely fantastic. She's been taken on the last twice of the lead. I thought she was a precocious front-running sort, but she's now shown she doesn't have to lead and she likes a battle. The way she's been coming back at Fernie Hollow and Blue Lord here, that's an admirable quality to have in a horse. I still think she's probably up against it in an Arkle as a 5-year-old mare, not getting any weight for age allowance. the Blue Lords probably should be at the head of the market with Edwardstone. I honestly can't call this race at the minute. It's wide open. The one thing that I was left a bit disappointed with in this race was Horten Calor departing very early, because he's just now such an unknown quantity again. Like I just would have liked to have seen him at least get to the end. We could kind of place these horses a bit better, but I wish I could tell you, but this race is going to take some dissecting, and I don't have the answers at the minute.
Yeah, I made a selection, obviously, people who watched the podcast last week, and that was Saint Sam. I wasn't too disheartened with it. As you say, he made a few mistakes. I think he'd prefer some softer ground. That would definitely help him. I imagine they'll stick the hood back on him as well, although I did run some stats earlier, and I think Willie Mullins is something like 0 from 11 when sticking the hood back on a horse at Cheltenham. So that's obviously not a positive sign at all. And Jake, what did you make of Blue Lord this weekend?
Yeah, so a lot of people were talking after the race about how Riviere Tattersalls is going to reverse that form at Cheltenham, but I don't really see it. I think it was a fantastic effort from her, no doubt about that. But Blue Lord, I thought, he travelled into the race. He got to the front at the last, where Riviere Tattersalls obviously made that mistake. He then opened up about a 3-length lead, maybe 2.5 length lead over her, before probably just tying up a little bit in the closing stages where Riviere Tattersalls got back at him. Now, obviously, people are saying if Riviere Tattersalls didn't make that mistake, then she would have won the race, which is probably true. But I do think that Blue Lord did tie up in the closing stages. You've got to remember that the Arkles run over a lesser distance than that, which is going to help him. I thought that Blue Lord was delivered quite early. I think you could probably leave him, not deliver him so soon next time. And there's also the fact that Riviere Tattersalls is going to be £2 worse off with Blue Lord at Cheltenham. I think she's obviously a really good mare, but I was very surprised to see Blue Lord drift after the race, despite winning the Arkle, that we all thought would be, the key trial to finding the Arkle winner. Obviously, it's muddied the picture more than it's cleared it up, but I'd still think that Blue Lord is the one to beat.
Yeah, depending on how Edwardstone runs this weekend, providing he does run this weekend, Blue Lord could almost stalk him round the whole way. There's going to be a fierce pace on, so most probably a pace collapse. And yeah, I reckon he could get a nice little toe into the race through Edwardstone.
I think Edwardstone like that as well, wouldn't he? I mean, you've got enough pace angles in there without him needing to go forward. Riviere Tattersalls, third time lucky's precocious. Saint Sam, if he goes here, will go forward. I mean, God help us if For Pleasure somehow gets here as well. That'll be another side. Maybe some side on the run to the first of some of the Magic Days. He might turn up. She loves to go forward. Like, this could be some spectacle over the first. It might end up suiting a closer. Normally, it does suit when it goes quite prominent, but depending on the makeup of the race at final decks, this could be some sight over the first.
We'll move on now quickly to the Irish Gold Cup. I'm in the opinion this is just an absolutely awful race. I don't think the winner stands a chance come Cheltenham. Following the race, we did all sort of agree that it was somewhat back to what we expected from Manila Indo. And Dan, I saw that you stuck him up as an eye catcher. Talk us through that.
Well, no, he has to be. Again, it's hardly the most inspiring selection in the world, but this is the second time in a row that he's come into this race. It's quite incredible, of course, fairly lightly raced as he is, but 2 times in a row he's come into this Irish Gold Cup with a lot to prove. And I think this time he was a far better performance than last year, before obviously he went on to win the Gold Cup. Look, I mean, you can pick holes in this race all day long. Frodon was disappointing, stuck to the inside religiously. Not sure if that was necessarily the right call there. Kenboy, I think, is just becoming a bit hit and miss. Maybe age is catching up with him. And a few others, Styrian Volange, looked like he was going to creep into it nicely, and then a blunder 2 out, and that was him gone. There's plenty you can pick holes at in this race, but I almost wouldn't be too worried about the bare form in terms of a return to form for Miller Indo. You just wanted to see him kind of go through his race a bit better. No cheek pieces, thank God for that. He wasn't going out with a ludicrous early pace. Just a lot more to like with a view to Cheltenham, which is undoubtedly where he puts in his best performances. And in a very open race, like, he's got a very, very good chance of retaining his Gold Cup crown.
Jake, have you got any more to add on that at all?
Yeah, I couldn't have had conflated in a million years, let's be honest. None of us could, but it was funny after the race.
No, about that. Have you seen Twitter? Everyone had him. It was the second coming of Labaik. It was unbelievable. Like, I've never seen
Yeah.
so many people who've never mentioned a 50-1 horse cheer a 50-1 winner in my life. It was, you know what? I almost admire it. It was absolutely fantastic.
Okay, apart from the a million after time, no one could have seen it coming. But yeah, I mean, it was just funny. Eddie O'Leary after the race was like, "Oh yeah, we had him in the 2.5 mile handicap chase the next day, and we thought we were going to run him in that." So it's like, how on earth anyone was supposed to get that? Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I think it was all about Manella Indo bouncing back to form here. As Dan said, I thought he ran a cracking race, probably even better than when he bounced back to form in this race last year. They've trained him all year with one race in mind. That's the Gold Cup, and it was just so good to see him finish out his race, get home, and yeah, it will all be the routes leading to Cheltenham now, and I think he's got a cracking chance to regain his title.
We'll move on to the Future Stars bumper, the final race of day one. And I mean, the race lived up to its name, didn't it? Facile Vega running away with it, 12 lengths back to the second. And we look set for a brilliant clash in March with him and American Mike. Jake, it would be very hard to come away from that and not be impressed. What did you think?
Yeah, it was remarkable. It was a fantastic performance of Facile Vega. It gave you obviously similar vibes to Kilcruit last season, but I think it was kind of different in that the pace collapsed in Kilcruit's bumper last year, which made him look even more impressive than he was. Whereas Facile Vega actually quickened away from them in this bumper, which is something you don't often see from these bumper types. You know, quite often it's the grinder who goes and stays on and wins these races. But yeah, he was fantastic. Sandokan again was in second. He was beaten 12 lengths, and he's a really highly rated horse as well. It's interesting. Paul Nolan's since come out and said that they don't even know if they're going to bother taking Facile Vega on again at Cheltenham. They haven't made a decision yet, but obviously it's just one of those things where you look at the horse and you go, "Wow, how the hell are we going to turn that form around?" The only thing I will say though is that the current prices, I would probably still marginally be with American Mike. If you look at the RPRs, then Facile Vega recorded a 136, American Mike recorded a 133, and the horse that he beat 17 lengths was Battling Bessie, and she finished, she was beating a nose in the Grade 2 mares bumper the following day. So I think that form is looking pretty strong as well. As you said, it's going to be a fantastic battle between them, hopefully. And yeah, I would just be going with the prices with American Mike, but yeah, two top prospects.
Yeah, it wasn't even 24 hours after Jamie Codd had really stuck the nail on American Mike, going to win by the half a track. Dan, has Jake missed anything there? Or was there even a bumper horse in behind that maybe we didn't miss because we were so fascinated by the winner?
I mean, so many of these came in with a decent reputation. Obviously, Gordon was all about it's what unites us. He was very, very keen on him as a prospect. But I mean, this was performance of the week by some margin. I mean, I can't remember a bumper performance like this. It was truly magnificent. And spare a thought for Paul Nolan here. So Sandokan again beaten well here in second round, absolute stormer. I mean, before that, Facile Vega beat Joyu Machan, another one of his highly regarded newcomers as well, last time out. I mean, it almost feels like the case with what happened with latest exhibition in the Novice Chase season, may he rest in peace, when he was bumping into Monkfish every time. It's like, well, do we even go to Cheltenham with him? Because he just keep bumping into these Willie Mullins monsters. Like, the guy can't catch a break when it comes to the top end of these races. But no, this was something really special to behold, like just a true performance where I think everyone from people who purely judge races on visual impressions, and I imagine the time figures guys, I think a few were raving about him before this race, so God only knows what they're going to be doing now. But yeah, the race at Cheltenham will be interesting. But I mean, I'd be hard pressed to oppose Facile Vega after this, because that was absolutely stunning.
We'll move on now to day two, and we'll start with Galopin Des Champs in the Novice Chase. He has absolutely battered them. For me, he has to go to the Turners. There's only one way he can go. What do you think of it, Dan?
Well, yeah, that seemed to be the most common consensus after the race. And I don't know whether the seeds of Ruby Walsh had been sown and we'd all started to think that way. And then it was just kind of confirmation bias after this performance. But it was interesting to hear the comments from Willie immediately after, implying that he thought he was out of his comfort zone at some points. I didn't necessarily get that impression watching the race, but perhaps the tempo of the Grade 1, obviously he didn't get to lead straight away this time. And at some of his fences, he really reached for a few. Like, he was taking off miles outside and lesser horses would have landed on top of the fence. But he kept getting over him. So maybe that's what he was referring to. But you say he's just a remorseless galloper at this kind of trip. And for a 6-year-old with only 2 starts over fences, you wouldn't normally be in a rush to send them 3 miles at Cheltenham in what can be a truly trying race. But then again, we have to remember who we're dealing with here, Willie Mullins. I think the only 2 6-year-olds to have won in recent times, both had 2 starts over fences to their name. One was Don Pully, the other was Florida Pearl. The genius himself trained them both to win. So honestly, who knows? I think for most conventional people, they'd be going, yeah, let's go to the Turners, aggressive ride out in front, see what can catch him. But it's another one of those, like, we're just in so many situations. We've got the Supreme, the Ballymore, the Turners and the Brown Advisory. It's all hinging on 1 or 2 defecting. And it's just, the market's going to get turned upside down in the weeks leading up to the festival. It's going to be so cruel for some Ante-post books, I imagine. But if it was mine, I'd be going Turners. Just, I think that's the route with the view to the long term. But a part of me thinks he's going to turn up in the Brown Advisory because Willie Mullins is a madman and a genius all at once.
I'll say I've definitely know a few guys on Twitter that have put him up at 25s the RSA, so they definitely want him to be going that way.
Oh, they are. They have got their slip in their hands, like they are praying to all that is holy. Just let him get there.
I watched it back, and he just seems just a touch keen through the start of his race. Now, we know he does stay 3 miles. He did on the back of the last year over hurdles. But yeah, that's the reason why I think he should go for the Turners. And maybe, obviously, as you say, the seed of doubt from Ruby Walsh. Jake, are you with me? Galloping de Champs to the Turners?
Yeah, it was really strange hearing Willie's comments afterwards for a horse who just won a novice chase on a grade 1 novice chase on only his 2nd start with fences, that he was slating his jumping down the back that badly. He was so unhappy about how he was jumping, saying about how it was a very uncomfortable watch compared to Christmas and all this. But yeah, it was a brilliant performance, obviously. Yeah, I guess you could say that the race wasn't exactly full of the potential opponents that we fought with, Capodanno unseating, Beacon Edge falling, and Fury Road making that massive mistake at the second last. But other than that, I mean, I think he still would have, obviously, I think he would have won the race either way, and he would have won it impressively either way. It's just, you don't have those form lines that you could link straight to him. But yeah, I think the Turners would be the race that I would be sending him to, because you can just go to the 3 mile race at Punchestown afterwards anyway, and that's a perfect little progression for him. But yeah, Willie definitely seemed to subconsciously be thinking that he was going to step him up for the festival, just right the way he was speaking. I think he's probably had some second thoughts on that now. His latest blog post says that he could easily go up and trip, but I love the way he jumps. You wonder, when a horse goes up and trip, can they keep that up for 3 miles? But at least he'll stay. So, I mean, that kind of hints more towards the Turners of, using his speed. But yeah, well, as the same with any Willie Mullins decision like this, we won't know until declarations. So we're just going to have to keep on playing the bingo game until we get there.
And maybe the early departure of Capodanno there is crucial. I mean, I think a lot of people would have been maybe hoping for a situation where Galloping de Champs wins quite nicely, and then Capodanno's is staying on second, and that almost would sort of show you that Capodanno would be the 3 miler of the 2 for now. But again, a couple of early departures in that race did muddy the waters a bit, not only in terms of the overall form, but also with future races in mind.
I wouldn't, Master McShee in second as well, although the race did fall apart, as you said, but Master McShee's no mug himself.
No, credit to him.
Very interesting. Yeah. I read a little post in a group chat, I'm sure they won't mind me saying it at all, with Capodanno's early exit. Maybe they could try him over 3 miles and get him qualified for the National Hunt Chase. Very interesting thought.
People love this game. Just let it go. Let the National Hunt Chase go. God.
We'll have a quick breather from the Dublin Racing Festival, and we'll talk just briefly about 2 horses around this weekend over in Britain, and that is Presse and Ahoy Senor. Both have enhanced their festival claims, although Presse most probably up against it if he does turn up in that Turners. Dan, I believe you had a few words on them.
Well, I think Presse is the best novice chaser in England. I really, really like this horse. He keeps impressing. The way he jumps is absolutely fantastic. He really just took that race by the horns last time out. And I know he's entitled to win it. The opposition, for all that a lot of them were very much hyped horses, realistically, none of them had achieved anything like what Presse had done. it's another boost for the Glancing Queen Fantasticas form line, which I'm holding on to again. For God's sake, please send Fantasticas to the Ultima. This is maybe the last time I'll beg my case for this, but that race, the Dipper, is looking pretty solid now. And I'd give a good shout out to the Glancing Queen for the Mares Chase as well at 14-1. I think she's overpriced based on that as well. It's a shame for the Presse, as you say, because the Turner seems pretty much nailed on for him. I think realistically, you would have a better chance with the way things are turning out in the Brown Advisory. I don't think they're going to be in a rush to step into 3 miles just yet, but I definitely see a reality when next season he's a big player in the races like the Betfair Chase, the Many Clouds, those top 3 mile races in open company, because he does stay on very nicely. So I think with a view to the long term, very nice horse. Festival success this year, it may be a stretch too far.
Quick one on La Presse as well. I imagine Aintree could be a plan for him afterwards, and maybe the Manifesto Novice Chase would be pretty good for him.
Yep.
Did you have any words on Ahoy Senor? Did jump out to his right a little bit along the way, but obviously stayed on quite well.
Yeah, I mean, when he's impressive, he's very impressive in the manner about way he goes about things. People love this kind of horse. He has his quirks, but he goes forward. He's powerful. He's not always the most fluent, as you say. He does go out to his right, but he's clearly got some scope. Look, what you'd have to say about this form is that his main market rival, St. Palais, ran absolutely no race at all. Ashtown Lad, we know isn't up to this level. He was battered out of sight behind Ahoy Senor at Newbury before. And Noble Yates, well, connections would have been furious. He got so close. That was not the plan in any sense of the word. Like, that horse was there for a dawdle round, and all of a sudden the second place just fell into his lap. And that horse may never be well handicapped enough to win a handicap in Britain, which is a shame for such reputable folks over there. It's a shame for everyone who's batting for the plate anyway, thinking that's been the plan. And God, I was close to doing it a few times. But no, I don't know over Ahoy Senor. I'm not 100% sold yet. I think that initial performance at Newbury was unbelievable, but I don't think he's really backed it up yet. Obviously, you kind of got put in his place by Brave Man's Game slightly at Kempton, for all that I think that race probably suited Brave Man's Games more, and Ahoy Senor didn't jump as well as he can. I don't know. I'm just not convinced that him yet. Good horse, but again, I'm not quite sure a festival win is on the cards for him.
Yeah, send him to the Gold Cup. Shaq and Poursoir, we'll move on to him. I believe he made this, 3 wins in the Dublin Chase. He was just back to his brilliant best at a course we know he acts out really well, albeit against an absolutely bang average field. I think the main talking point here is more about his Cheltenham plans. Jake, you had a fairly interesting theory on this. If you want to go ahead and lead with that.
Yeah, so he's obviously kind of been dubbed like the homeboy now. You know, he's really good in Ireland and just doesn't travel across to England. Obviously, he's had 2 starts and disappointed in both of them. Now, you know, you could give excuses. You could say that he's, ridden wrong in the Champion Chase and he got injured at Sandown. But either way, he hasn't performed the same level at Cheltenham and at Sandown than he has in Ireland. And, that's there in the form book. So I was just thinking perhaps maybe they could send him over to England a little bit earlier than the rest of the horses, rather than sending him on the boat, a couple of days before the race. Send him a week before, get him in like somewhere like Venetia Williams Yard or something like that, just so he can acclimatise a little bit and then travel, shortly to the races. But Willie's kind of given his own theory anyway on this. And he was saying after the race that they're just going to train him to like 90-95% fitness rather than, put him to 100%, which, you could say means he's a little bit soft, but if it works, it works. So I guess we'll find out at Cheltenham. But he's obviously going to be up against it, against Shishkin. You could probably say that he's a similar level of ability to Energamain, depending on the ground and the situation. If he travels across fine and runs his race, then those two wouldn't be too far apart, would they? So it'll be interesting. He's still a decent price if you do fancy him for Cheltenham. And just one more thing I wanted to mention this race was Grenadine. You can just put a line through that performance completely. I don't know why Bryony Frost was riding him down the inside of the track. Literally, all 4 other jockeys went wide. They can't all be wrong. Like I don't understand that at all. And obviously, Paul Nicholls are out of form. So yeah, just put a line through that if you like him for anything going forward.
I think I was listening to Willie afterwards, and I think he said something along the lines that they still believe that Chacun Pour Soi is the better horse than Energamain. Although you could see a world where Chacun Pour Soi runs a career best and still finishes 3rd in that Champion Chase. Dan, what was your take on Chacun Pour Soi, and would you be rushing to give him another chance at Cheltenham?
No, I mean, this is his race. Like, this is the one. I mean, it's set up. It's a week affair. Obviously, what was it? Dunvegan in second. I think he's an admirable sort, but second in a Grade 1 he's not really cutting the mustard for a real proper Grade 1. Look, this is his day. He had his chance at Cheltenham last year. It didn't work out. He's getting older. The comments aren't exactly inspiring when you're saying, "Oh, I can't drill a horse to be 100% fit." Let's lay off him a bit. I mean, I think he'll still win a couple of races over the next couple of seasons, but they'll be in Ireland, they'll be in softer races, and against the likes of NRNB and Shishkin, like coming up younger horses. I can't see it. I really can't.
All right, we'll fly through this one then. We'll go with Honeysuckle in the Irish Champion Hurdle. I don't think she was at her best this weekend, but then again, she didn't need to be. Zana here could most probably be an interesting one if he does step up and trip to the Aintree Hurdle. But what did you think of the race, Jake?
Yeah, she just did what she had to do. She put the race to bed as quickly as she normally does. Rounding that home bend, that was it. It was done. She went on, scored easily. If you look at the times, we'll talk about Sagarhal in a minute, but she's actually just a slightly bit slower than Sagarhal. But that's just because she didn't need to quicken. She didn't need to do anything. I thought it was a fantastic performance. And yeah, I think she's the most likely winner at Cheltenham. I'm not sticking my neck on the block there, but that's just
old calls here on the jump show. That's what you come to see.
If you talk about the horse in behind, I think Zana here, he's probably maybe one for the Aintree Hurdle. If you keep him fresh for that, I think he'd have a great chance. If he goes to Cheltenham, it might put me off him a little bit for that race, considering it's a 3-week turnaround. But if he goes there fresh, I'll be all over that. And then Echoes in Brain has been given a mark of 149 in Ireland. So if you're thinking about her for the county, that's probably looking a little bit too high. But we'll have to see.
Dan, do you want to fill in the blanks, if any blanks at all?
I mean, a few people have been crabbing the performance by Honeysuckle. I don't really get that, to be honest. The race was over in about 200 yards and it was done. She holded in front. She's getting a bit lazy, but they forgive her that. She's battering everything. So why would you really be bothered at the end of your races these days? Like, she's just almost imperious. You just want to see some new opposition. That's all you'd say. We might get that and appreciate it. Giving her £7 when he's not had a great prep is going to be some task. So yeah, she's a brilliant horse. Great to watch. Not one to put money on bigger than how she goes off at the price she goes off these days, but just one to sit back and enjoy.
Maybe just absolute media quotes, but Paul Townend says he can't wait to tackle Honeysuckle and appreciate it.
Yeah, so was it a Patrick Mullins thing in the Racing Post, was it? Yeah, sure, Paul. Have fun with that one.
I'd like to see it from 7 lengths behind, not 15. Cheers. And all right, last but certainly not least, we'll have to talk about Sir Gerhard, who I personally believe is the best novice hurdler we've seen this season. And wherever he goes, he will be carrying my hard-earned cash. He made some obviously errors around, but he still managed to burn off the field fairly easily. And I got the impression there was plenty left in the tank. Dan, am I getting ahead of myself here, or was that just a really impressive performance?
I mean, it was good. I mean, his jumping wasn't as good as last time. As you say, there were a few quite notable errors there. I think he's almost overly bold at some, and he's not quite got the technique to get away with it all the time at the minute. As you say, he's a novice, forgiven that. And yeah, look, it was good, but I wasn't blown away like I think you were, or I think Jake was quite impressed as well. It wasn't necessarily one I thought, wow, he's going to win at Cheltenham, definitely. I mean, you look back at the race, I mean, nothing really got involved. My mate Mozzie, far out, statuette, all 50 lengths behind, never really laid a glove on them. I think you probably take a line from Colonel Mustard in third. He's beaten 12 lengths. He's very consistent. He probably establishes the form to a certain extent. I mean, he was 3 lengths behind John Bon recently, but let's be honest, that was a slowly run race, and John Bon was probably far superior than the 3-length margin showed there. So I don't necessarily think this makes Sagard out as the absolute standout novice hurdler. I think the dilemma is now, as will be until Declaration Day, where does he go? Based on what I saw there, I wouldn't be in a rush to step him up. I know a few people want to see him in the Ballymore, and I think a lot of people want to get ahead of the curve and think which horse is going to defect from the Supreme to the Ballymore and try and get in there early. But I don't I wouldn't want him in that race. I don't think the way he goes through that race indicates he wants 2 mile 5 just yet. Now, I know it's a fairly sharp test, as we all kind of get told over and over again with a 2 mile 5 horse, but I think he's just a proper 2 miler at the minute. I would not be in a rush to step him up. And to be honest, I would still have Constitution Hill over him in a Supreme.
And the market would 100% agree with you, as Constitution Hill has remained rock solid at the head of the market despite that performance. Jake, before we get to the selections, what was your stance on Sir Gerhard and where do you think he'll go?
Yeah, well, firstly, he just jumped so indifferently. Like, if I'll just read it through it really quickly. So he was right and awkward at the first, quick but big at the second, similar at the third, right and slow into the fourth. He went straight through the fifth, jumped the sixth perfectly, and then got right into the last. So it was just a mixed bag. Like, he didn't really know what he was going to do until he did it. So that would be one little concern. And as Willie said after the race, he was awful for the first half and really good for the second half of the race. So that's pretty much sums it up. I personally would rather see him in the Ballymore, because I don't think he can get away with making those mistakes in a Supreme, where you're going to have the likes of, if he goes Dysart Dynamo, John Bond, these Constitution Hill, these probably faster horses. He's just not going to be getting away with that for me. So I think stepping up in trip wouldn't bother him at all. At the start of the season, that's where people were saying he was going to end up, Kilcroat in the Supreme and him in the Ballymore. I think either way, no matter what happens, I cannot see Willie sending Dysart Dynamo, Kilcroat and Sir Gerhard all to the Supreme. I think one of them's going to have to step up. I just can't see him sending all three of those big guns. But this is Willie Mullins, as we've said many times in this podcast. He does what he wants, and we won't know until Dex. So I think it was I still like Sir Gerhard for whichever race he turns up in. But if he is in a Supreme, then I think there probably would be one or two ahead of him.
The big takeaway there is Sir Gerhard, absolute certainty. All right, we'll hop on to the selections. And I'll kick things off. I actually got two selections. I'm going to roll with them both first time. So we'll go with my first one in the Grand Annual. I have missed the price here, but I'm still happy with the selection, and that is Buddy Rich for Gordon Elliott. Now, he's only won once this season, and that was in a beginner's chase, and he only beat Ballyadam, but he has finished second 4 times and fourth once. Just looking at the form, it keeps getting franked. This weekend was another good example of that. He has got form that ties him with third time Lucky, who is in some way an Arkle hope. And his last run where he finished fourth, that was his first time in a handicap company, and that's working out really well. He was given the second Grange Walk £11. Now he's now £13 higher after a win. He also finished second this weekend in a fairly valuable handicap. The winner that day was Dun Vegan off a mark of 139, and he won next time out, and he finished second in a grade 1 this weekend. So Buddy Rich is 10-1. If he turns up on the day, then he's going to have a massive chance. It's going to be over half the price. I'm going to back it each way 5 places with Betfair. As I say, I'm going to catch up with you boys here, and I'm going to go for my second selection as well. This week, it's going to be the Pertemps. This is more of an eye-catching run from the weekend, another Gordon Elliott horse, and that's Dallas to Pictons. This looks to obviously have been the plan for a long time. They got him qualified back in November, and just watching the run this weekend, he was travelling an absolute dream before folding away under a soft ride by Davy Russell. He's gone well at the festival before and a couple of runs in the Martin Pipe, so there's no concerns about the course. He's 16-1. I'll go each way 5 places on him there. And I'll head to Dan to muddy my selections and give me his selections as well.
Well, in what is a rare occurrence, and rare probably understates how actually rare this is, but I agree with you on the first one, and I'm all over Buddy Rich for the Grand Annual. He stands out so much to me in that race, and I've had him in mind for a while. The thing that put me off was the prospect of him running at the Dublin Racing Festival in that race that Grange Walk also ran in, but I think Gordon commented that he gave him a midwinter break, which was always going to be the plan, and didn't quite have him ready in time. So he completely left that off, and it's all roads to the Grand Annual. And I love that angle as well. Like, I think the last 7 winners prior to Sky Pirate came off a break of 50 days or more before winning the Grand Annual. He's going to be going there off like a 3.5 month break. Absolutely perfect. I won't go over too long because you mentioned a lot of the core details, but I think maybe the biggest takeaway of them all this weekend is the grade 1s, the graded races at the minute, how things work in Ireland. Willie Mullins, that's his playground. The handicaps are going to be where Gordon Elliott shines and where he's going to be able to make up the difference at Cheltenham if he wants to have any chance of winning the trainer's title there. So Buddy Rich is a perfect example of that. I think he's very feasibly handicapped in Ireland. I don't expect him to get hammered too badly by the BHA, and maybe marking the low to mid 140s would be absolutely fine. And that handicap that you referenced behind Dunvegan and Grange Walk, he watched that back. He travelled like the best horse in that race for my money. Like, he looked pretty much he was going to hack up that day, and he just faded late on. And I think you can forgive that because it was his 6th start in just 69 days. Like, he was clearly at the end of his rope by that stage, can clearly move on. I think there's still a bit more up the tank. He's a novice with handicap experience. He's run at Cheltenham. He's trained by Gordon Elliott. Davy Russell's going to ride him. There's just so much to like about his profile for this race. Like, I can see him going off maybe chosen mate price level, like a 7-2 favourite on the day, because I think he's going to be extremely popular. We know this is the plan and the target, so barring anything else, I don't really, not even worried about non-runner no bet. So yeah, I'm a big Buddy Rich fan for the Grand Annual.
Absolutely love to hear that. Jake, who was your selection?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to have to make it a hat trick for Buddy Rich, to be honest.
Yay!
Podcast now.
God, we're going to look so stupid when he doesn't even run, aren't we?
Goes and blows his handicap mark next in a couple of weeks' time. Jesus.
Yeah. So obviously, I've already put up Curse of Line for the race. I'm happy with the position. He's now into 10s and 12s as well. But he's been given a mark of 148 in Ireland, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it does mean he's going to get probably 152 minimum in Britain. And with the Arkle being blown wide open, with Fernie Hollow, defecting after his run, connections may think, why don't we just chuck him into the Arkle and have a go at that? So I'm keen to have another selection in the race. I think I mentioned at the time I'll probably end up having 2. And yeah, Buddy Rich will be my second. I don't think there's really much more I need to add to any of it. You guys have made the case perfectly. His form is working out left, right, and centre. Dunvegan is now rated 162, unbelievably, after his performance in the Grade 1 this weekend. So yeah, all the forms there to see. He's off a mark of 138 in Ireland. It'd probably be 145 maximum in Britain. Perfect. Yeah, happy days.
Dan, did you have another selection for us as well?
I did. Yeah, we're in non-runner no bet territory here now, and as Willo, as you put it so many times in this show, if there's one thing I'm very good at, it's backing non-runners. This is probably what I'm going to be doing here, but at least on this occasion, I've preempted it, and it's a non-runner no bet one only, and that is crucial when you can get 25 to 1 with Bet365 and BetFixer about this horse, and that's Annsam in the Ultima. Like, he's entered in the 3 Mile Coral Trophy at Kempton towards the end of February, which is a likely target. Evan Williams isn't exactly known for targeting the Cheltenham Festival too much, but if Annsam does run in the Ultima instead, there's an awful lot to like about his profile. He's very lightly raced, and he won very impressively off 134 last time out. Did it the hard way too, ran from the front, fought off Storm Control and Cloth Cap, who gave him competition for the lead. I spoke a bit in the fantastic ass explanation about being prominent in the Ultima being a big advantage, and that's the way he likes to race. A £6 rise for that win looks very lenient when you consider Phoenix Way, who was second, won next time out. And I love the way Annsam pulled out extra that day. It looked like Phoenix Way was getting to him, and then all of a sudden, Annsam, who was unexposed at the trip, just pulled out a bit extra. I thought that was really, really nice to see. Evan Williams actually has indicated that he might even be a Grand National horse down the line. I mean, some of the things he said, like in most recent quotes, are crazy about different targets. He was mentioning, I think, the Skybet Chase didn't run in that. Then he's got the Kempton races he entered in. He even said he might go for the Lanzarote hurdle. It's like he's got all kinds of weird plans. So this is the non-runner no bet factor here massively. The one thing that indicates to me that he might go for the Ultima is the fact the owner also owns Cool Cody, who we know loves to go at Cheltenham. So maybe the owner loves to target Cheltenham. And Evan Williams has said that Cool Cody won't be running in the plate this year. He just thinks it's probably too much for him at this age. So he'll be coming back in April. So if Evan Williams and the owner want a runner at Cheltenham in a handicap, it's going to be this lad. And off his current mark, 140, lightly raced profile, I think he would be a single figure price of the day if he ran. So a 25 to 1 non-runner no bet, it's a shot to nothing.
Don't want to get ahead of myself here. Jake, did you have another selection as well, or was your main selection Buddy Rich?
Yeah, no, I've got another one, and I'm going to kind of end the podcast where we began, actually, by looking at that 2 mile 6 furlong race on the weekend, the Novice Hurdle, and I'm putting up Manila Crooner for the Albert Bartlett. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, I thought he ran a cracking race. if we just go through his profile, then he was a point-to-point winner, beating Tom Lacy's Views horse Scipion. He's a 1-3-1 horse in Britain, so that was a decent performance, beaten by 2.5 lengths. He then ran in 2 bumpers, the first over 2 mile, 2 furlong at Sligo, where he won by 3.5 lengths really easily. He then went to Punchestown under a penalty, and he gave a stone and a beating to the second horse, and he won that by 6.5 lengths. So he obviously, is a very talented individual. He then went hurdling, made his hurdles debut at Leopardstown over Christmas in the 2.5 mile maiden hurdle. That day he was second behind Journey with Me, staying on really well towards the finish over what is, we can now say, it's an inadequate trip. And he had Kilcret behind, who's obviously gone on and won since, obviously, albeit at a different trip, but it was still a good performance. Last month, he went to Punchestown, stepped straight up to 3 miles on soft ground, and absolutely bolted up by 11 lengths. As Dan mentioned, the jumping was a lot better that day. He didn't beat much. There was a 1-2-3 horse back in second, but he still beat him 11 lengths. So, happy days. And then, as I mentioned earlier about this weekend, he was the one horse who was coming off the pace, traveled into it, managed to show his stamina to get as close as he did to Minella Kakuna, only beaten 2 3/4 lengths. I don't know if Minella Kakuna is going to go for the Bartlett or the Ballymore. That's just one of those Willie Mullins decisions. But either way, I think that Minella Kakuna will reverse that form. 3 miles is going to absolutely be made for him. And as Dan mentioned as well, the new course, I think, is going to really suit him with only those 2 hurdles in the last 7 furlongs, whatever it is. I think that'll be really playing to his strengths as well. So yeah, he's going to be one that I'm going to be putting up as, I know he's only 7-1 now without the no bet concession, but I think that's more than fair. And I think he's going to be one challenging, and probably go off short on the day with Ginto currently favourite. I think he's probably going to go to the Ballymore, and Journey with Me is also still in the market with many. And he's likely to go to the Ballymore, having run over 2 mile 3 furlong this weekend. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like about Minella Kakuna, and he will be my selection.
I think that just about wraps up the podcast, boys. We've somehow managed to discuss all the big races in Dublin Racing Festival. We've got 6 Ante-post bets, including, well, technically 4.
4.
But you want
one big one. Yeah.
But one of them's a triple stake. So I'm absolutely over the moon with that. I'm about to go and tank back in on that 10-1. Fantastic. At least
you picked an easy race as well to all go in on. The Grand Annual's easy.
Yeah.
24 runner, 2 mile on the old course. Piece of cake.
All right. Well, guys, I hope you really enjoyed the video, and we'll be back next week where we'll discuss, I imagine, the Betfair hurdle. Again, some more Ante-post bets for you as well.